The following report looks into the state of Kenya's security ahead of the general elections.
Earlier this month, Human Rights Watch warned about criminal gangs in Nyanza and central Kenya linked to politicians.
Our investigations in Kenya's largest city show even more illegal groups that pose a threat to Kenya's upcoming elections.
We will hear firsthand of murders committed by gang members in Mombasa, meet the men behind two of the most dangerous gangs in Kisumu, and reveal which groups are likely to instigate tribal violence in Nairobi. Kenya's second largest city, Mombasa is a regional, cultural and economic hub that has placed the country among the top tourist destinations worldwide. Its intricate history and proximity to South Asia and Zanzibar has transformed the once prominent trading center into a strategic city for Eastern Africa. Mombasa's great white sandy beaches, its leisurely paced lifestyle that has attracted millions of tourists, and its rich port that is also exploited by Kenya's landlocked neighbors has earned it a spot on the list of the richest counties in Kenya. Beneath this beautifully scripted story of Mombasa, however, lies the reality of harsh poverty, high unemployment, and elevated criminal activities. In the year 2010, the government gazetted the names of 33 illegal groups. 3 of the most dangerous were to be found in the coastal region. But this gazette notice, an attempt to avoid a repeat of the 2007 post-election violence, did not jolt the group's leaderships. Instead, it appeared to embolden groups such as the Mombasa Republican Council, posing a real and present danger to the 2013 general election. Security agents in turn, under President Kibaki's directive, hastily shut them down. The menace, however, did not end there. Criminal gangs that had since been silenced resurfaced in most parts of Mombasa. We are in Mombasa City to find out who runs these gangs and why the police have not been able to suppress them. Within the outskirts of this coastal town, I am off to meet a family that has lost 2 sons to the specter of gang rivalry. A close relative to the victims says they are still afraid to leave the house. The gangs have warned that they will not hesitate to take out another member of the family. And so for her protection, we will conceal her identity and refer to her only as Naima, not her real name.
Mtoto wangu wa kwanza, Muhammad Kadhi. Alitolewa ndani ya nyumba huko kwa asila, akaja kauawa na sijui sababu ni kitu gani.
Naima says the first victim of gang violence from her family was killed early 2012 in Majengo. A ruthless gang known to many here as the Machete Gang is said to have been behind the brutal murder of the 2 brothers in broad daylight in the heart of Majengo.
Sisi ajua hiyo mambo zote. Sikuona kitu chochote kilichoendelea kwenye serikali. Paka watu wale wakaenda na wakarudi. Na wakarudi akanulia mtoto wangu hivyo hivyo. Na ngaenda hapo kwenye maiti yangu hivyo hivyo. Nikamwambia askari 10 wamesimama na SETH. Akamwambia kazi gani ambayo umefanya wewe SETH? Ule mtoto wa kwanza ni huyo una pili ndugu yake. Kazi gani ile unafanya mpaka amekuja na pili katika kifo cha mtoto wangu? Kwa nini mnionea mimi? Sasa nasema nauliza kwenye askari mimi kwa nini si wa Kenya mimi? Kwa nini mnisaidii nami ambao mlinda wanyama na watoto wangu wawili mimi kutolewa roho na mambo nilikuwa ni wadhuri zangu na kunipatia chakula. Sasa serikali imeamua kitu gani sasa?
Naima's chilling experience in the hands of the Machete Gang has changed her entire family's life. All other children in her household were sent to hiding. They do not go to school, she tells me, and are not allowed to walk outside the house unattended. Naima, however, is one of the few residents here who are willing to narrate their heartbreaking experiences in the hands of these criminal gangs. One of the gang's major targets, we are told, are the motorcycle operators in the town, commonly known as Boda riders. Every week, according to police reports, more than 2 riders are killed in unclear circumstances in Mombasa. And it's these overwhelming statistics that lead us into this far-flung village in Bamburi area in Mombasa, where one of the riders is recuperating after surviving a vicious gang attack. Unlike Naima, however, his family is willing to have their identity revealed. We are led into this dimly lit room, where sits Danda. It's been 3 weeks since his attack, and his wounds tell of his attacker's brutality. One of the bullets he shows me went through his shoulder, another through his mouth, and the third one hit him in the thigh. With the intense pain from his injuries, Danda cannot have a conversation with me, so his uncle has come to have the interview instead.
So it was on 28th at around 11 p.m. when I got a group of Boda boys. They came to my house and knocked the door and told me that your nephew has been gunned by robbers.
With all the victims that we speak to in Mombasa, there is one similar trend. They can all identify their attackers very well because they live in their midst. Naima, for instance, shows me these photographs. She says these are the men who killed her two relatives. They were seen in broad daylight by a number of witnesses. But no one in this community dares speak out against the killing machine in their midst. The rising number of murder cases in the hands of these gangs speaks loudly enough of the terror of deadly armies that rule Kenya's underworld.
We cannot just call each and every event of crime, we gang it into gangs, or we try to assemble it and try to formulate some kind of gangerism. These are criminals who are just who are normal criminals who are meant to be arrested and taken to court like another people. The only problem here, you find some of these issues happening in the estates are not properly reported. If they are reported, then we also don't get people volunteering to give evidence.
Agre Adol is the provincial police officer in charge of the country's coastal city. He has seen it all. From the killings in Tana River, homegrown terrorism perpetrated by the Al-Shabaab terror organization, to groupings that have unsettled security apparatus. The city was at the center of violence during the 2008 post-election chaos. But after a few days, as the rest of the country went up in flames, Mombasa found its footing. Residents here laid down their machetes, stopped barricading roads and looting. But as calm returned to the seemingly laid-back streets and alleys, the vicious gangs too bounced back into business. The killing of the two brothers by people who shared the same playing grounds of Majengo, and the slow pace at which police have moved in to bring to book those behind the brazen killings startled Majengo's cosmopolitan community here. The gangs from Majengo are said to have been behind the violent protest in Mombasa that followed the murder of the controversial Muslim cleric Abu Drogo in August 2012. The pace at which the gangs mobilize its members to take on law enforcement agents, an indicator of a network criminal gang. For the days the riots rocked the town, business were disrupted, forcing many to stay indoors. We tracked down one of the gang members, only identified to us as Richardi, to this house in Majengo. Just a few kilometers away from the scene where two brothers were killed, one of them had his body mutilated. Residents here know how notorious and influential the gang members are, but they closely guard their comments. No one wants to disclose information that can be traced back to them about the two boys turned gang members. An agitated mother who declined to appear on camera told us the son has not been seen home for 2 weeks now. When I pressed our father, the mother admitted the son is not the only young man involved in deadly crime in this neighborhood. Parents here admit that selecting friends for their sons is practically impossible. Lack of work has forced their sons to run estate crime rings that continue to worry family and neighbor. A man identified as Toli Fire is alias drawn from the fire station area in Mombasa, where he commands the following, is allegedly blamed for the killings here. The Provincial Police Command downplays the existence of structured gangs, especially in Majengo area. But life is changing here every day. We learn that since the killings, youth who once shared the same playing grounds no longer do so.
No, we have really done away with the criminal groupings within the region. We have a very, very capable flying squad and even other teams that has been going around in civics, and they have really done a very good job. They need a compliment.
But in this town, It is not only Richardi and Toli Fire who have committed the resources of police investigators. Boda operators have a structured killing gang that executes those who attack their members. Abdallah Abrahaman runs a small community policing office in Kisauni. Abdallah took us to an open field where 2 suspected gangsters were lynched by a group of motorcyclists angered by a robbery attack on one of their own.
Ilifika pahali pia wenyewe wakaamua no, enough is enough, let us protect ourselves. Ndio wakaunda kikundi chao, wakawa na machairman wao, wakawa na network wao wenyewe. Wakijua mshukiwa yuko wapi, wanamchukua, wanafanya hivyo ambako it is against Kenyan law.
Abdallah shows me gory images captured on his small camera of past killings carried out by members of the public. But the trend, according to Abdallah, slowly transformed from hungry mobs lynching potential suspects to handing them over to organized gangs. The network is so organized that in the event a suspected robber has been arrested by the members of the public, the services of Funga File come in handy. Security agencies appear to have let the operators run a lynching ring for them.
Usipeleke pale mtu kama ngali life, mpeleke pale half dead ndo at least wamuone vizuri, lakini upeleka pale mwizi umevunja mguu, wewe ndo utashikwa.
Mara nyingine anapata fahamu mpaka kupiga kelele. So akipiga kelele, ikiwa wengine wako karibu, ndio wanajaribu kuzingira pale ile sehemu ile na tunamkamata ule mhalifu. Tunamalizana naye ikiwa sisi tu wenyewe tumehakikisha kuwa huyu jamaa kama ni visu tumempata navyo, tunaona.
The group's history and ideologies mirror those of the Mungiki sect, a group that metamorphosed from being a spiritual outfit to a criminal outfit. They offered protection services to residents, but later turned on the very people they were supposed to have been protecting. Thursday, 27th September 2012, 15 men are killed in the little village of Sangatsini in Kilifi district. The local police command quickly declare that the killings are the work of angry villagers avenging the murder of an elder who discovered a group of young men undergoing an oath-taking ceremony. Apart from taking the lives of the clean-shaven men in their late 20s, the residents also discovered in the hands of the men several pieces of paper bearing names of the Nyuki gang and areas they hail from. Also discovered were cell phones that security agents could have used to determine who their masters were and what their mission was in the remote village. 5 months on, many residents here insist those who died belonged to their community, and it could have been impossible for villagers to turn on the very people who spoke their language and have them killed. Those who survived the lynching were later arraigned in court, but seemingly the government never cared to get the real faces behind the young men. Members of the local community say their sons could not have been members of the Mombasa Republican Council or any other illicit group. Indeed, KTN can now report that most of those killed were hawkers. 3 of them were born and brought up in Mugombezi area in Kwale. The young men were given between 10,000 shillings and 40,000 shillings by handlers of local politicians in Mombasa County. When the oath-taking ceremony was bungled, security agencies branded them Mombasa Republican Council members. But the young men were in fact members of the dreaded Nyuki gang, a criminal outfit available for hire in the coastal town. Family members of some of those lynched alleged that the men were arrested alive and later died under mysterious circumstances.
Kama ni watu ambao wamefungwa kamba, hao tusilikuwa wamesalimu amri, kwa nini wauawe? Hilo ni swali langu ambalo nilikuwa ninajiuliza kwa roho yangu. Swali lingine ni kwamba hao vijana wote waliokufa ni waduruma. Ni waduruma. Na romance inasemekana kwamba kuna vyama vingi hapa Kenya ambavyo hivyo vinadanganya watoto. Siwezi jua.
What has unsettled them more is the fact that most of those found dead had their hands tied to their backs, despite government claims the 15 men were lynched by the mobs. Those who took part in the lynching say some of the young men are declined to divulge any information about their mission in the village. The resident told us they had no choice but to have some of them killed. Nyuki's sting is still potent in Mombasa. Those who financed them for the mysterious mission are known to the police, but so far, nothing has moved. In late January, police officers raided a village in Malindi and arrested 9 people undergoing yet another ritualistic ceremony. The group had arrived in Dabosa on motorcycles when the locals alerted the police. Residents estimate the number of riders who zoomed past villages to the forest were more than 200. Each of those arrested had a shaving blade in his pocket, just like it was in Sangatsini, where 15 men were killed. Those who died had already been shaven clean. During our investigations in Mombasa, our plans to meet the top gang members were disrupted after police reportedly gunned down one of them. His colleagues are said to have disappeared, and we are told they have escaped to Oman for cover. These dangerous gangs, though small in the eyes of the police, are still at large. Our journey now leads us to a town where gang leaders and their activities are well known, and for the first time, KTN will expose their identities and their agenda.
KTN's journey to expose the deadly gangs that have dominated Kenya's biggest cities has brought to light Mombasa's vigilante groups that have turned into criminal gangs. We are now heading to Kisumu town, where politics and money have born ruthless gangs that frustrate security agents. And later, we will meet the gangs likely to fuel tribal tensions in Nairobi's expansive slums. A rocky ridge covered with thorn bush is how Charles Hobley, a British colonial administrator, described Kisumu back in the year 1900 before it was cleared and roads were cut. Today, the port city of Western Kenya stands tall as one of the major economic hubs of the country and the East African region. A strategically placed city by the Great Lake Victoria, with a deep history of Kenya's struggle for independence and her transition into sovereignty. Kisumu, however, is also a hotbed whose passion for politics often reveals a much darker side. The chaotic scenes in the party primaries brought worry that Kisumu could face a fate similar to that of the 2007 post-election violence. The streaks of violent protests witnessed here, especially during the heavy political seasons, have been attributed to the rising number of unemployed youth in the city. A majority of those without jobs spend their days in small gatherings, politics of course dominating their conversations in such groupings. Within my first day in Kisumu, I have been invited for a game of pool and a quick chat on the current politics at a local. I'm hoping that after this conversation, some light will be shed on the violent trends in Kisumu during elections. Nomination kulikuwa na vurugu. Hiyo huwezi hide.
Okay. On that, naweza sema hivi. Unajua hiyo is a stronghold of ODM. Yeah. So unajua yule candidate amepewa cheti, ni rahisi kuenda tu direct bila kushindana kwingi, kwa sababu stronghold yako unajua uko na upigaji kura. Unajua hawa watanivotia. But vile huyu amenyang'anywa, unajua wafuasi wa ODM bado watakuwa tu wanataka kuvote yule ako ODM. Sasa ndio kwa sababu walikuwa naenda barabara ili wapewe yule walimpigia kura.
Kuna watu wanasemekana huku Kisumu, mayouth wamejiweka kwa mambo ya vita kiasi, magangs. Wanajulikana wanaitwa Chinese, wengine American. Wako, do they exist?
Okay, kwa mimi hiyo kitu nilisikia tu hii juzi wakati wa nomination. Lakini kitambo kulikuwa na zingine ambapo serikali walitoa. Lakini nikasikia tu hii juzi.
It's midday by the Great Lake Victoria, a slow day for the fishermen who return to the deep waters for the evening catch. The women by the shores are left waiting patiently for the second catch of the day. It's here where I meet Mama Dunga. She tells me she's been working at these shores for close to 40 years. Her intriguing narratives of past general elections and the one approaching speak of the maturity with which she views the March 4th poll. She says she's seen it all, heard it all, experienced everything that elections in Kenya have to offer.
Na hiyo mtu ajue sisi nataka mabadiliko. Mabadiliko sisi nataka watoto yetu nakosa kasi. Kasi ziko na ananyimwa kasi. Hiyo ndio makosa nilikuwa nataka sana mabadiliko. Kama mimi ni mama mzee, watoto yangu walikufa kitambo, iko na wajukuu, mshafundisha paka university, hakuna kazi. Na kama iko mtu anajua tunaendelea namna gani, naweza kupata kazi. Watoto yetu asome kwa njia ya amani. Na watu akuwa na amani, usikue ati mimi ukiona sijui huyu ni nani, mimi nachagua ni fulani. Hiyo kama hakuna Kenya itakuwa mzuri.
Lakini sasa wakati wa election ikifika, kila mara lazima kukuwe na vita ama vurugu huko Kisumu. Na kwa vijana ndio wanaleta hizo vita.
Najua kwa vijana hii watu wanaletanga vita si wale watu wa heshima sana. Ni wale watoto ndio naanzaga hizi vitu. Watoto ule ambao hata natembea kwa town naitwa ninja.
The ninjas that Mama Dunga speaks of could not be far from the truth. According to recent reports, 2 major gangs have been clashing for the control of Kisumu County. The American Marines are said to be in brutal rivalry with the China Squad. Purity Akoth, a freelance journalist based in Kisumu, is one of the few reporters that have had the courage to write extensively on these gangs. She has agreed to talk to me on her work, and I'm crossing over to the other side of the town to meet her.
The ordinary gang member is someone who's seated at around Kondele area, along Kisumu-Kakamega Road, someone at the bus stop who has no proper job, who is waiting for matatus and to look for passengers to fill that matatu, and he or she will be given 10 shillings. So what do? Because they want to forget about their stress, their frustrations. They still go back, buy a bag, which is 10 shillings, buy ndondo or something, which is 20 shillings or 25, eat and smoke whatever they're smoking, and they forget about the rest of the day. So they're ready for anything that might happen. Yeah, so these are just people who are unemployed and they have nothing to do actually. Yeah.
How dangerous are these groups?
I'll say that they're dangerous because they're being used to terrorize people. Yeah, they're being used to create chaos and to give business people, to make business people to be insecure because they don't know if tomorrow they'll wake up and their business will be there or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think they've terrorized the community and also create some sort of insecurity.
In October 2012, police in Kisumu reported the murder of a prominent businessman and political aspirant. Shem Kwega and his wife were reportedly shot several times in broad daylight. Shem succumbed to the injuries, while his wife, Rose Onyango, was rushed to the intensive care unit with life-threatening injuries. The China Squad was immediately linked with his murder. And shortly after, violent protests erupted in Kisumu, where 4 people were dead and several others injured.
And they say it publicly when the late Shem was being buried. I think there's someone who said publicly that it was not a normal robbery. And they know there's some hands that were involved in this. And some outer forces, that these were people who were sent to come and kill this guy because they knew this guy was going to take the seat, the Kisumu Central seat.
The late Shem's widow, who had agreed to grant me an interview, has cancelled our meetup last minute before traveling to Nairobi. I meet Nyamori, a close friend to the late Shem Kwega, who tells me that the late aspirant's family is still receiving threatening messages from these gangs. This explains why Rose Onyango has been hesitant to meet me.
Kwega was his nickname from a phrase he used in his campaigns. He would always tell people Kwega. Kwega means go slow and be peaceful, something like that. So it's quite an irony that a peaceful man was the first target. But Shem's death definitely sounded a warning to the whole town that crime was building. And then it also happened at a time when Kisumu was facing a crisis of gang fights.
The China gang has drawn its name from the economic powerhouse that the Asian country is slowly turning out to be. The American Marine gang has drawn its name from the positioning of the American government as the most powerful nation in the world. Predictably, these are Kisumu's most visible gangs that have both political and monetary muscle.
The gangs in Kisumu have mutated from being a disorganized group of young people who meet in bus stages to become very organized structures that control both business and political spheres.
The gangs grabbed the headlines in September last year after street battles rocked the lakeside town of Kisumu during an intense campaign season by politicians in the area. The government moved fast to clamp down on the protests, but the bad blood between the two groups continued to simmer several months later.
When a local journalist in Kisumu supplied me the contacts of two major players in the rank and file of the two rival gangs, he warned me I should not dare disclose his identity to the gang leaders. My first phone call was to this man, WILLIS OCHIENG, alias Boy, the organizing secretary of the Chinese group that he vehemently denies exists as a criminal gang but a social welfare outfit. The organizing secretary of China gang agrees to grant us an interview at night. The man shows up on a motorbike. One informs us is part of the thousands his welfare association has purchased for its members. China, he says, has spread its wings beyond the lakeside city of Kisumu.
Out of the many youth in Kisumu, how did you stand out as a leader of the Chinese group?
China group is a member of 35 members, but Friends of China are more than, I can say more than 8,000.
WILLIS claims the Chinese group has existed for several months now. Its interests are purely economic. Violence, insists, does not define them.
Out of the members we're talking about, how do you decide who gets a loan for a motorbike, who gets a loan for some small business? How do you go about it?
The 35 members have the strength of the statement. As I am a butcher and a transporter, I do also kaya. So with the strength of my statement, I'm able to guarantee a motorbike operator, we call them Boda or Jopeng. I can, with my strength of my statement, I can use it in the bank, in this banking institution, and have more than 500 motor vehicles. Or let me talk about the limit, the small number, five motorbikes. If I get the motorbikes, I'll give them to an individual, each. That are 5 people. We'll agree that every day you give me 300 for 2 years.
But China has another life. The group claims it is keen on regional politics. For one to hold a political rally in Kisumu, one needs the services of China and American groups. WILLIS tells me they have directly dealt with major political leaders in the recent past.
We have 46 Prados. We have 8 caravans. That's for public address. We have machines for public addresses. We do kaya business. We have public addresses machines. We have what do you call it? These small vehicles for hire. So when we did a business with and he paid us good, it was a good business doing. It was a good business between us and because he paid us. Because we have dealt with several politicians, but he was the one, and I enjoyed doing business with because of one thing, because he never went with our money. Other politicians, we have been giving them vehicles and caravans on debt. We took From airport to Ndewa, from Ndewa to Imperial Hotel. Then the next day we picked him from Imperial Hotel to airport.
Just like the Funga File group in Mombasa that claims it only kills to protect its members, the Chinese group in Kisumu has been struggling to distance itself from acts of violence. The just concluded party primaries in the expansive region presented, according to WILLIS, a perfect opportunity for his group to demonstrate how peaceful the organization is.
Our agenda was peace in Kisumu. Our resolution was we have to contain and fight peace for Kisumu. We chose all the police stations. We have 3 China members that were reporting to a station. We had a tallying station with our intellection. We have 3 people who are tallying any votes they were getting, that we have a tallying station. And we had 3 people who we were calling intelligence on ground. We had intelligence ground that any information we were getting, when the tension was too high, we were SMSing the PPO. And up to this juncture, the PPO did not know anybody giving them intelligence report.
China members were accused of pulling the trigger on Shem Kwega, an ODM aspirant killed in a drive-by shooting on the 29th of October last year. The American Marines have since claimed the killing was not a normal act of robbery and that the China gang was behind it.
He was the one who was in front of destructing our properties. So the way they know us, they thought that we could retaliate or we could act upon what they did to us. But we never did that. But with bad luck, he died 2 weeks, 1 month after destructing our property. But we were not after that.
Shem Kwega was shot several times and slammed on the steering wheel. Weeks later, police investigators arrested 2 suspects. The pair is currently facing robbery charges. Just as mysteriously as he had got here, WILLIS OCHIENG left. Our next move was to meet a man largely described as the face behind the American gang. But first, we met a member of the gang. A few blocks from Kisumu Central Police Station is a church building converted into a recreational facility. It is here where former members of Baghdad Boys, a dreaded criminal gang, run a non-governmental organization. It is also here where we meet SETH OCHIENG KANGA, alias Mada. Mada was once a member of the Chinese gang before its members parted ways. With political campaigns now entering the home stretch, Mada tells us politicians are now seeking the services of the American Marines, this time round more than any other time.
Kama hao watu wa campaign wakitaka sisi huo tuna combine that force. Alafu maybe unaweza sema mi Mada wacha niende Rongo, we Adui wacha niende Seme. Alafu tunachukua vijana hao wadogo hao tunawapeleka wanachapa kazi, wanarudi mtaani kama kuna kitu kidogo.
The Chinese gang has accused the American Marines of extortion, disrupting of political rallies and killings. But the American Marines throw the accusations right back, blaming China's code for many ills, including the killing of Shem Kwega, a local politician.
Watu wa China walikuwa wana threaten huyo Shem Kwega. Wanaandika message mbaya, utakula. Tunaona wewe ndio unatao hao watu huwezi kula. Ndio siku chache ndio Kwega kakufa.
It is not clear who killed the politician, but an incident at the local police station during the party primaries demonstrated how powerful the American gangs have become in Kisumu.
Amerika hawakuenda huko ati wawachiliwe. Popular demand ndio walienda wakawaleza hao askari. Huyu alifanya kampeni yake vizuri, hakununua hata panga akaweka kwa gari. Haikuwa hivyo.
In the fracas, one policeman was injured. Someone shot him as the crowds demanded the release of a man KTN has since established is an influential political figure in the town. Seth OCHIENG KANGA alias Adui Nyang is the man we set out to meet. Adui suggested a location for our meeting, a busy street in Kisumu's central business district. Adui first wanted to know who gave us his phone number. When we finally met him, Adui was in the company of two other men. Adui had earlier been arrested on suspicion of purchasing machetes ahead of the party primaries. Dispelling such talk was his first call.
Some allegations were made against me that I bought some pangas and some rungus, but they were just allegations. But the police cleared me because they were just said they did not have authentic information that I was the one who was responsible for that. And after that, we came out, we talked to our supporters, and we urged them to remain calm so that we can approach the elections in a peaceful way.
Adui Nyang denies being a member of the American gang that is notorious for extortion and intimidation in the lakeside town of Kisumu.
If they exist, it's upon the police to investigate, to authentize that such groups exist.
The local police commander since insisted that China and the American Marines no longer exist, despite raising a red flag over the activities of the two gangs in Kisumu a few months ago. But the fact that police recovered over 50 machetes in a vehicle on the eve of the party primaries has forced them to unearth the faces behind the machetes and the motive. But here's the catch. Both China and American gangs have shown up with information incriminating each other. Police have been unable to move. In a city where several protesters were killed by police bullets in the bungled 2008 general elections, former leaders of dreaded gangs are warning that some of the officers who took part in quelling the riots are still in Kisumu. The two gangs blame each other for the extortion and intimidation of revelers out in social places and those who run small eateries. What is worrying many here is not the self-proclaimed pressure groups of China and American Marines, but the silent population that is likely to be exploited.
Kisumu is under threat of violence in the coming elections. Kisumu today has many bases, which some of them will be called barracks. Everywhere. We have bases in Manyata, we have bases in Kondele, more than 4 in Kondele, more than 3 in Nyalenda, more than 3 within the CBD. To me, these bases are more of a threat to peace towards the election than these other groups.
Audio Gada headed a violent underground movement, later branded a criminal gang at the height of multi-party politics.
They have told the US Embassy, they have visited this place, they have talked to me. I've told the government, I've appeared in the security meeting of the province, I've told them. And I'm still saying it here, the issue of Chinese and America is not a threat to peace in this town. Because, why I'm saying this? This is a visible group. These are people that are known. These are people whose contacts the police has.
The two groups have promised to maintain peace during and after the general elections. The government, on the other hand, insists it is on top of things, but residents here are not a convinced lot.
The complexities of national security in Kenya, especially during an election year, cannot be overlooked. While criminal outfits that surface mostly during the heavy political season, such as the ones we've met in Mombasa and Kisumu, can easily be dismissed or viewed as insignificant, they could also pose a great danger to the poll. Here in the country's capital city, the cast may be different, but the script is very much the same. Recent reports from slums in Nairobi have exposed the danger that criminal gangs pose to the general election. December 18, 2012, more than 30 houses in Mathare are razed down in an overnight attack by unidentified assailants. Dozens of families are left displaced. As the news spread across the country, so do insinuations that two communities were yet again clashing in Mathare. Police reports shortly dismissed the ethnic tensions, stating that gang rivalry was behind the attack. 2 weeks later, dozens other houses are burnt down. This time around, one person dies in the incident. Again, the gangs are blamed for the arson attack, but the residents are already turning against each other. When I visit the slum early February, rebuilding is taking place. Most of the families that were affected are slowly picking up the pieces. The issue of insecurity, however, is not spoken of openly. Only quiet murmurs are shared out. Most victims are still afraid to speak out in open, and they only agree to speak to me away from their neighbors. They say, you can never know who is a gang member and who isn't.
Hakuna siku yenye tumesikia hata mtu akuja hapa hata amekuja kutusaidia tangu kuchomeke mpaka wa saa hii.
Mimi nyumba yangu imechomeka saa 8 usiku. Nilitoka na kila kitu sikutoka nayo. Kuna bibi na watoto. Bila tukitoka yani kama moto ndio yeye unawaka.
Kutokea tarehe 23 hadi Januari, sasa tuko Februari. Watoto hawajawahi kanyaga shule na mguu. Hiyo si unajua ni mbaya. Na usaidizi yoyote sijapata. Kazi pia sina. Itabidi sasa nirudi kuoria, nikae kwa parking, oria niite nifue nguo, ndio tena nirudi nijiinue kibiashara.
Bila kusema usiku, kutoka na vitu tunarudishwa ndani. Na mrudi ndani tumeke ndani na mavitu zetu.
The bridge you see behind me is the infamous bridge that separates Mathare 4B and 3C. 4B on that side and 3C where I'm standing. It's a bridge that carries with it the history of the post-election violence when two tribes clashed. And it's a bridge that the residents here use to unite the tribes that live in this slum. But for the criminals who hail from this informal settlement, the bridge is a tool that they use to divide the residents here. And that explains the scenes that you see, such as the ones behind me.
Hii si mambo ya ukabila. Hakuna ukabila yenye iko hapa. Juu hata hapa 3C tuko na Wakikuyu, tuko na Waluya, tuko na Wajaluo. Ukienda ngambo ingine kuna Wakikuyu, kuna Waluya, kuna Wajaluo. Hapa tu ni hiyo mambo ya moto tu ndio inatusumbua.
Peace campaigners in the slum say that other parts of Mathare are relatively peaceful. However, in the event that chaos erupts in Mathare 3C and 4B, it would quickly spread across the entire slum.
Mara mingi sana vitu zinapofanyika, watu wanakuja wanakosa kuwa na ile ya uhakika ya uhalifu ama kuzungumzia insecurity. Lakini wanakuja wanataka kuilabel ya kwamba ni tribal violence. Na ndio sisi tumejaribu sana kuzima hiyo kitu, kwa sababu tunaita kwamba kitu kitendeka kama ni uhalifu, tuitreat kama uhalifu. Tusikuje tuchukue makabila zingine tuanze kuingiza tena kwa vita yenye aliko.
The potential threat for Mathare experiencing another tribal clash is worrying, especially with only a few days to the general election. A 58-page report released by the Human Rights Watch warns of the flaring security threats posed by dangerous criminal gangs across the country. The report has also warned that without the government's intervention to pull the plug on organized crime in areas such as Mathare, security may be a problem in the upcoming poll.
Sasa demo wanakuja kuchoma, hatujuagi wanakuanga ni Wakikuyu ama ni Wajaluo. Sisi tunakuanga tumelala. Sasa sisi tunasikia tu moto ni mbio. Wewe utajua ni Mkikuyu ama ni Mjaluo ndiye amekuchomea. Wewe Mjaluo ni mbio, wewe ni Mkikuyu ni mbio.
It took us close to 2 weeks to establish contact with the gang members in the expansive Mathare slums. The slum has been home to violent scenes of arson attacks, pitting rival gangs. The displacement of families has taken an ethnic dimension. Turning to criminal gangs for protection is the new dilemma for security agents. Our contact person directed us to Ngei area in the heart of Mathare slums. A gang leader only identified to us as OC had finally agreed to grant us an interview, but on condition that his identity is not revealed. Mike, not his real name, has been brought up in Mathare slums. Schooled in the city and without a good job, the man has resorted to estate criminality to raise his young family.
Mtaani, hii job yetu tunapewa kulingana na
bindi yako. Mimi niko na jeshi karibu mtu 10, tuko mixed up because tunashare the cost. Hizi vitu pia saa zingine tunazikosa, inabidi tukomboe ama tubai.
Mike says his gang operates within and without Mathare slums.
Kuna zile mchoro za maana, kuna zile za mtaani hapa, hizi tu za tao 2 tao 3, unajua hizo huwezi ambia sana, lakini wanajua au jo kuna mse fulani ana hii kitu mahali fulani.
This residential area is dominated mostly by 2 ethnic communities who have in the recent past been fighting a perception that acts of criminality in the slum are ethnic based. That perception, according to Mike, has forced his gang members to prepare for any outcome ahead of the March 4th general elections.
Mtaani naye siwezi kudanganya, watu wamejipanga huko. Kama mimi ni Mlum na kuna rival ya Walum na Wasapele, so hii area yetu ni area ya Walum na wanachorea because wanasema wote viti kutaenda hii side na kukienda hivi sisi tunatoa noma, tukienda sisi tunatoa noma, so tukawa sisi tunachukuliaje ndio mna hizi mabidhaa, so nyinyi mnatafuta to protect, so tunakuwa aware mapema kama saa hii tumeshachora kiasi.
Mike tells me they do not own guns, but the neighboring community is ready to hire them out in the event they are needed.
Juu last time dishi kubwa ilipatikana na where, so saa hii kila mtu ako prepared, kila kijana ule ako kwa game yetu ako prepared, wale washapata to do, unajua wewe just in case hizi bidhaa zenyu tutazitumia.
Mike is not the only gang member of a slum-based criminal gang. Eric, not his real name, says he belongs to a 5-member gang.
Kuna Chivas na huko mbele Ngei 2 kienda. Sasa hii yenye tuko ni Ngei 1. Ukienda huko mbele ni Ngei 2. Kuna group inajiita Chivas huko. Pia kuna watu 1, 2, 3. Unajua si kufanya shughuli ni kitu na risk. Na hakuna mtu anaweza kwenda lose life yake. Azin kitu mimi usema kwa life yangu sana. Ni wewe ndio uchukue kitu unachukua tu siondoe life ya mtu. Alafu pia sipo kuji expose tu fanya shughuli.
Criminal intelligence officers have downplayed the potential danger criminal gangs pose in the city slums, but events in the recent past have forced slum dwellers to preach peace among communities here. Mathare saw some of the worst acts of violence during the 2008 post-election violence. Communities that enjoyed somewhat peaceful coexistence went for each other, hacking members of communities perceived to be enemies characterized a chaotic post-election period in the slum. The government has announced that communities living in Kibera slums and other post-election violence hotspots have purchased machetes. As the country ages closer to a general election like no other, the National Police Service says there are individuals in this particular area planning to purchase weapons ahead of that historic event. But senior officials drawn from the Criminal Intelligence Unit, a department of the National Police Service, says they're not aware of such a report. The timing of that pronouncement by the Inspector General Police has been termed suspect. Senior intelligence officers who work under the Inspector General Police have since denied being supplied with such intelligence. 90,000 police officers will be deployed to polling centers and polling stations across the country. The Inspector General Police has already gotten his 2 deputies who are trying to settle down quickly at the helm of the country's 80,000 strong National Police Service. The Inspector General Police will, however, have to rely on the country's provincial police officers in policing the polls.
And with these deadly gangs ready to go for the kill in this lucrative election season, the new leadership at Vigilance House will now have to convince the worried parents of Majengo, the apprehensive residents of Kisumu City, and the resilient neighborhoods of Mathare that there exists yet a power in the land more powerful than the vicious armies of the underworld that are seemingly a law unto themselves. My name is Asha Mwilu.
My name is Adenison Sarigo, and this is KTN.